Hello, Rodeo Ranger, coming to you from the greatest country on earth, Canada. And today I'm going to talk about why, Donald Trump hates Canada. Why is he so jealous of Canada? It's really quite simple, the answer. Canada has more land mass than the United States does. Canada is the second largest country in the world. Secondly, Canada has more oil than the United States does. Canada has the second largest oil reserves in the world. Third, Canada has more fresh water than the United States does. In fact, Canada has more fresh water than any country on earth. Fourth, Canada has more rare earth minerals than the United States does. Fifth, Canada has less crime than the United States does and a much lower murder rate per capita than the United States does. Sixth, why does he lie about fentanyl coming across the border from Canada to the United States when the exact opposite is the truth? More fentanyl flows into Canada from the U.S. than what flows from Canada to the United States, and it's always been that way. But Trump lies about it. He's a liar. That's all you can say. He's just a liar. He wouldn't know the truth if it jumped up and bit him in the ass. Next, population density. Canada has one of the lowest population densities of any country on earth because of the great vastness of Canadian territory and the relatively lower population of about 38 million people. You see, Donald Trump can't get to sleep at night because he knows Canada has everything he wants, but he can't have it. The Canadians would rather line up at our border and fight to the death than become a 51st state. You see, our government has checks and balances that won't allow one man to simply sit down and make all the new laws he wants. What do you call it in the United States? I think it's called dumb executive order privilege. In Canada, our parliament system has checks and balances, so no one man can control the entire country. We don't have a broken government like the U.S. does that just doesn't work. They'll elect a Republican leader this time, Donald Trump. But next time they'll elect a Democrat leader who will undo everything the Republican leader did, thank God. And it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth like this for the last 200 years. This is why the U.S. has gotten nowhere. They're literally hated by every country on earth. Allies won't trust them. They abandoned the people of Afghanistan. In fact, they ran like cowards, abandoning military equipment to the terrorist Taliban. 147 Canadians died fighting alongside Americans in Afghanistan because of 9/11. And Canadians took in thousands upon thousands of Americans when the flight paths were closed over the United States on 9/11. And what do we get? Betrayal. Backstabbed by our so-called friends to the south of us. Trump says our border is a fake line. Well, that border was created because we won that territory in battle. And it's not a fake line, although Trump, in his little tiny pea brain, who thinks he's a good golfer, believes that he can change that boundary. It won't happen. In the future, I can see many of the states that border Canada's uh, boundary with the U.S. wanting to become part of Canada. Ask any American if they wouldn't want free health care from cradle to grave. Ask any American if they wouldn't want to be able to send their children to school without them being terrified of being shot. Ask any American if they would like to have the second largest oil reserves in the world. Ask any American if they would like to live in a country with much less crime, a much lower murder rate per capita. You see, Canada has everything Americans want to have, but can't. Why? Because our country has a government that actually works for the people, by the people. The United States has a president that works for the president, by the president, bought and paid for by Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg, and so many other billionaires. Because you see, unless Trump became president, he was going to prison for the rest of his life because he's a convicted rapist. I believe at last count he was convicted on 37 felony counts. Money laundering, underestimating his values of his properties. And the guy claims to be a deal maker when he has bankrupt 6 countries. How do you bankrupt a casino? How do you bankrupt a gambling casino when all it does is take in money from the people that they rip off? All the odds are stacked in favor of the casinos. Who do you think pays for those big casinos and all their wages? It's the suckers that are brought in to lose their money. You see, Canada, the true north, strong and free, will always be. And Canada will get larger. Because in the future, I can easily see many states wanting to become part of Canada, wanting to have what we have, wanting to go to work and not even have to lock your door in most areas of the country except the big cities. Who wouldn't want free health care for their children from cradle to grave as long as they live? Is it perfect? No. But we love our free health care system. You see, Donald Trump will tell the Americans that they pay less taxes. But he doesn't calculate in the $600-700 a month Americans have to pay for those bogus health insurance policies. Because that's what they are. They're bogus. Oh, you need Plan A. Oh, you also need Plan B. Oh, wait a minute. We have a Plan C as well. More money, more money, more money. And then when you get sick, you're denied because of a precondition. Oh, you can be sure your insurance company will find a way to deny you. That's the American way of life. That's not the Canadian way. You know, I've had cancer in 1982. I'm now 73 years old. And I never once got a single bill from the hospital. Any ambulance trips I had to take, I never once got a bill. Did I have to wait? No. That's a lie propagated by Americans. If you need immediate surgery in Canada, you get it. For elective surgeries, yes, you have to wait. There's a lineup for knee replacements and things like that. But you know what? If you've got enough money, you can do what Americans do. You can go and buy your health. How many Americans have lost their homes because of bills? How much debt do Americans owe because of health bills, hospital bills? You know, America is a fake country. Why do I say that? They built the largest military on earth by borrowing money. $38 trillion in debt to build a military to fight a fake enemy. There is no enemies of the United States. Russia's not attacking the United States. Canada doesn't need the American military to protect it from a make-believe enemy. Canada has no enemies. In fact, it's the Americans that have no friends. But there's no imminent threat of an attack from anyone. It's all bullshit, propagated by lies, just so you can show off your big aircraft carriers, your huge stockpile of weapons and jets. For what? The only war you've ever fought, Vietnam, you lost. In Afghanistan, you lost. You went running with your tail between your legs. Like I said, leaving billions of equipment behind for terrorists to use against other democratic countries, if they so choose. You see, United States, Trump would have you believe that Canada cannot exist without the U.S. Well, I believe it's the other way around. I believe without Canada, the Americans are in trouble. And they can't take our natural resources. We won't just give it to them. They can't take it by military force. That would bring NATO in and all of Europe to fight with Canada against the U.S. Oh, the Americans could win in the long run, but at what cost? 20 million dead? Canada will always remain the true North, strong and free, with a full democratic government that works for the people, by the people. It's the American government system that is broken. It doesn't work. It's never worked. The only real benefit the United States government has been to the American people is to the filthy rich, the billionaires, the multi-billionaires, the mega-billionaires, like Bezos, like Musk, like Zuckerberg. They were allowed to build monopolies, and the government backed them. So they raked in hundreds of billions of dollars. This is how Trump stayed out of prison. Those guys made sure he got elected by feeding the American people over and over and over again lies, lies, lies. Trump will end the Ukraine-Russian war on day one. Trump will lower prices for everyone in America day one. Trump is going to do this day one. Trump is the greatest man to ever make a deal day one. It's all lies. And every day we get to watch this Levitt witch tell the world over and over again just how great Donald Trump is. Watching her kiss his ass is just, it's just comical. She knows she's lying, but her arrogance and immorality just allow her to propagate that vomit and regurgitate it over and over again to the American people. One day Trump raises tariffs, the next day he drops them, the next day he lowers them, the next day he raises them, the next day he takes them away, the next day he puts them back on. He puts tariffs against every country on earth. Well, that's just a surefire way to destroy your own country, because what do you think all those countries are going to do? They're going to negotiate free trade agreements amongst themselves and leave the Americans with nothing. That's exactly what's happening right now. It's American store shelves that are going to be empty. It's American car dealers that won't be able to sell their vehicles. Trump says it's a tax. Trump says that the people that are bringing in the products will be paying that money to the American coffers. That's a lie. It's the Americans, when they buy those products, are paying that tax to Trump. But Americans somehow are so stupid, they don't understand that. They think that if they have to pay $10 for something that costs $5 before Trump's tariffs, they think that that money, that extra money, doesn't go to Trump so he can give tax breaks to his filthy rich pals who kept him out of prison? The truth is, America has lost their courage. The courage to back Ukraine to a point where Ukraine can win its war against an invader. An invader who wants to change boundaries of a sovereign nation by force. And Trump is going to go along with it because he's gutless. Because the American army, they just carry a big stick, but they haven't got the courage to use it. Every time Putin makes a threat, the Americans cringe in fear. That's right, they cringe in fear. Trump threatens nuclear war. The Americans won't send what Ukraine needs. You know, and Putin's a wanted war criminal, and Trump wants to negotiate with him and have his whatever you call that fool that went over there to negotiate, shake his hand? Shake the hand of a murderous war criminal? Is that who Americans are now? You've lowered yourself to that point where you smile and are so happy to see Mr. Putin, the guy who's murdered thousands of children? That's America. That's how the world sees America, because you're backing a killer. You're backing a murderer, a monster, who eliminated all those people who tried to run against him. Remember Navalny? Murdered while he was in prison under Putin's care? Remember the people poisoned by Putin in Britain? Remember all the people that suddenly fell out a window? This is who Trump supports? America has lost her way. God won't allow it. God is going to deal with America. And I fear his wrath is coming very soon. Rodeo Ranger, Canada, we love you. You're the greatest country on earth. Canadians know it. And everyone that visits Canada knows it, especially those Americans who come here for the summer. I see them on all the lakes. I'm an avid fisherman. I talk to them. They tell me the same thing, that they can't believe the feeling of safety they have while they're up here at their cottages. They don't need a handgun beside their bedstand at night because they're worried somebody's going to break in and shoot them. Because anybody in the United States can have a handgun. In fact, you can buy a sniper rifle just in case you want to overthrow your government. That's America. That's not Canada. Canada will never be like that. Canada will never be a 51st state. And to Donald J. Trump, the chump, on behalf of all Canadians, I would like to send you one last message. Go yourself. You're a piece of crap. You're a scum. You're a bully. You're a braggart. You've convinced yourself how great you are, and yet you're about the dumbest creature walking around the White House that I've seen in my lifetime. Where is the Ronald Reagans? Where is the John F. Kennedys? Where is the true leaders America used to elect? You know, we see Trump and he's surrounded himself by ICE, Gestapo, arresting Americans and deporting them without due process. That's what we see. That's what Canadians see. We see incompetent idiots using a chat system, Signal, to spell out their attacks before they happen, putting their own soldiers, their own military at risk. Well, that's incompetence. And in Canada here we see a leader who speaks with grace, with dignity, with honor, with truth. And we stand him up beside what Americans have in their White House now as their president, a liar, a braggart, a bully. And Canadians clearly see that, but Americans, they don't. They just don't see it. And I believe this is God has made them stupid, just so God can fulfill his plan. Rodeo Ranger over and out. God bless Canada. Greatest country on earth. Over and out.